Okay, and I'm not an Oilers fan, but I'm going to do a video on them because, as a hockey fan, I like to see as many Canadian teams get into the postseason as possible. I'm a big fan of Canadian ice hockey, and it would be nice to see more than just two teams make the playoffs from Canada. I was hoping Calgary would. They fell back. They completely fell apart. Ottawa never got going. Vancouver, we know they're rebuilding, but I was disappointed with Montreal, and of course Edmonton, were an average team. They were just middling in the middle of the road. They weren't consistent. The issue with Edmonton is McDavid and Draisaitl and the defence score takes up a lot of salary, and that is a problem, especially with McDavid and Draisaitl. They're on big contracts. Ryan Hopkins, I think, is on the way out. I think he's trade bait. He's also on a big contract, but it's not as big as Draisaitl and McDavid. And I feel sorry for Ryan Hopkins because when he was drafted, he was on a poor team. Um, Taylor Hall's gone. Yakupov never really got going, but they drafted these players in the draft lottery in the first couple of draft picks, and because they weren't doing very well, they were rushed in to the team, and that may have hindered some of their development. Now, Ryan Hopkins has played rather well. He's a solid third line centre. He can play second line. He can even play first line if need be. He can play in any of the top three lines. He adds depth, but I think he's trade bait. Milan Lucic needs to bounce back from a really below par season, and he is past his best, but he has to get better. He's a power forward. He's an energy guy, and that's what Edmonton needed at times, was an energy guy, and they were lacking energy at times. Defensively, their defense score is overpaid, which is a problem, and they're very close to the cap. They're in a Detroit-Chicago situation. Now, it actually costs more in Canada to pay players and to budget because of the currency discrepancy and because the wages are paid in dollars. It actually costs more to run a Canadian team than an American one. We'll have to see what happens after the draft and in the summer, free agency and things like that. We'll see what moves take place in the summer before the season starts. Yamamoto, I'll be looking to come up and have an impact on the team as well because he's young, he's quick. He's small in stature, but he's young and quick, and that was an issue because Edmonton were too slow. Yes, they can get back to the playoffs next year. They have to make a couple of changes, and I think Ryan Hopkins gets traded out as part of those changes, which is unfortunate because he has put a shift in for Edmonton since he's been there. He's really put in a shift with the Oilers. He's played a lot of games. He's never given up, and he may be the piece they have to trade out. If this was pre-salary cap, these issues don't happen. Because it's the salary cap era, and the salary cap is unless it goes up significantly in the next, let's say, 5 years, they're going to be at the cap for a while because of McDavid and Draisaitl's contracts. Cam Talbot needs to bounce back. He cannot have two bad seasons in a row. Montoya, he's a good backup to have. I think he's underrated, not overrated. I think he's underrated. Some people are writing him off as an NHL goaltender. It would help if he had a defence in front of him to give him support when he's put in net. And same with Talbot. They need that defence to improve. There may have to be a defenceman change as well. A couple of defencemen. They've got a couple of young prospects. Yes, they can make the playoffs next year, but they have to make certain changes in the forward department, in goal, or improve the goaltending coaching as well, and the support the goaltenders get. But the defence core is their real problem. And the salaries they're paying these players. I think Chiarelli has overpaid them. The contracts they have signed, they're getting paid too much. They've made the playoffs once in a decade, and that is a problem for a team with the history that Edmonton have. With the amount of Stanley Cups they have. They haven't won the Stanley Cup since 1990, and they haven't got the playoffs since 2007, I believe. And they made it all the way to the final and nearly pulled it off with a less than stellar team at the time. So going forward, they need to give McDavid and Draisaitl more support in the forward department. And Yamamoto and some of the other prospects can do that. And in defence, they really need to look at that defence core and go, do we have to trade some of these guys out and bring some guys in? So we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. As I say, I believe they can get back to the playoffs next year. They can be, in the mix for the playoffs. It'd be nice to see all the Canadian teams do well next year. I have no doubt that they will all have to improve. They cannot all be as bad as they were this year. And we'll leave that as that. If you're an Oilers fan, place your thoughts below. Even if you're not an Oilers fan but you're a hockey fan and you want to see the Canadian teams do well in the NHL, because I do, because it's a great advert for the sport and saying, look, it's the home of the sport. So when Canadian teams struggle in the regular and post-season, it's a bummer. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. As I say, place your thoughts below, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.